Today, we're diving into a poem that is just as powerful as it is heartbreaking, Gillian Clarke's Lament. This piece was born directly from the fires of war and environmental disaster, and we're going to break down exactly how it achieves such an incredible impact. I mean, just listen to that line from the poem's ending. It's apocalyptic, it's final, and it's absolutely devastating. It throws you immediately into a world where everything has been scorched and extinguished. So that's the big question, right? What kind of real-world catastrophe could possibly lead a poet to write about the sun itself being put out? Well, the answer lies in a very specific and very dark moment in modern history.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start with the real-world events that sparked the poem. Then we'll deconstruct its solemn blueprint and its incredibly powerful language. From there, we'll walk through its gallery of grief before we finally uncover its profound message about truth itself.
First things first, to really get this poem, you have to understand the Gulf War. This poetry didn't just appear out of nowhere. It came directly from the news headlines of the day. So the conflict escalated really quickly, but the event that truly defines this poem happened right as the war was ending. Retreating Iraqi forces went with a scorched earth policy, setting hundreds of oil wells on fire and spilling millions of barrels of oil right into the Persian Gulf. It was an ecological disaster on a scale that we've rarely seen, and that is the immediate backdrop for every single word that Clarke writes. And you know, this is what's so fascinating. Gillian Clarke was acting almost like a poetic journalist. She wasn't on the front lines, but she was absorbing all of the media coverage. You know, the shocking photos of oil-soaked birds, the voices of grieving mothers on the radio, even reports from environmental groups. All of it became the raw material for her lament. All right, let's shift gears and look at the poem's structure. We're going to see how its very shape reinforces its message of grief. The construction here is absolutely not an accident. It's a deliberate, solemn blueprint for mourning. The title alone tells us everything we need to know. A lament is an expression of grief. It's an elegy. And it even has military connotations, the sound of a bugle playing a sad tune for the fallen. The entire poem is basically a list of things being grieved for. Now, the poem's architecture is incredibly deliberate. It's built from 7 3-line stanzas, what we call tercets, and it's written in free verse. But the real key here, the most important structural choice, is that every single line is end-stopped. It ends with a comma or a period. And that decision has a huge effect on how we experience the poem. The effect of this structure is, well, it's immediate. By stopping us at the end of every line, Clarke forces the slow, deliberate pace. It feels like a prayer or a eulogy where each loss is named, you pause on it, and you give it its own moment of quiet reflection before you move on to the next. So we've seen the structure. Now let's zoom in on the specific words and literary techniques that Clarke uses to build this monument of sorrow. The very first thing that jumps out at you is the relentless repetition of the word for. This is a technique called anaphora, and here it acts just like the tolling of a funeral bell. Each repetition marks another casualty of the conflict, another species, another person, another piece of the planet. Here's another really crucial choice Clarke makes. She uses metaphors, but she never uses similes. She doesn't say the oil-covered bird is like a mourner. She says it is in its funeral silk. See the difference? This isn't just a comparison. It's a statement of a new, terrible reality. War hasn't just damaged the world. It has fundamentally and permanently changed it. And she doesn't just use the meaning of words. She uses their sounds. You can hear the hissing S of sibilance in Nest of Sickness, and it sounds so insidious and poisonous. The hard K sounds in Hookbeaked feel harsh and sharp. The sound itself becomes part of the poem's sorrowful music. Okay, so let's move to the heart of the poem. We're going to walk through some of its most powerful images, almost like visiting a gallery where every single painting depicts a different kind of grief. The poem opens with this image of a pregnant green turtle. She's following this ancient biological instinct to return to the one specific beach where she was born to lay her own eggs. So let's break this down. The pulsing burden, that's new life, right? But its destination is a nest of sickness. A place of birth has been transformed into a place of death. The turtle's own natural instinct has tragically become a death sentence for its own children. Next up, we have this image of the cormorant, which was actually inspired by a real newspaper photograph. This became one of the defining images of the war's environmental destruction. And the language here is just steeped in mourning. The black oil becomes the bird's funeral silk. The shimmering oil slick is a veil of iridescence, kind of like a widow's veil. Beautiful, but a symbol of death. It's as if the entire ecosystem is attending its own funeral. And Clarke makes it really clear this isn't just about nature. She pivots. She shifts her focus to the human cost. She names Ahmed, a refugee trapped at a closed border, and the soldier whose uniform has literally become one of fire. She draws a direct line between the suffering of the natural world and the suffering of humanity. And that brings us to the poem's apocalyptic conclusion. After listing all of this physical destruction of animals, of people, of the earth itself, Clarke turns to something even more fundamental. The final lament isn't for a creature or a person. It's for vengeance, the human motivation that drives this whole cycle of violence, and, most chillingly, for the ashes of language. What could that possibly mean? This final metaphor, and Clarke has explained this herself, refers to the death of truth. The argument is that in war, language itself becomes a casualty. Propaganda, political spin, they burn away meaning until all that's left are the ashes of what was once clear and true. And that leaves us with this huge, profound final question. The poem itself is this incredibly powerful use of language to tell a story of destruction, but if its final conclusion is that war turns language to ash, it makes you wonder whether any story, even this one, can ever really capture the full, unvarnished truth of the devastation. It's a powerful and pretty unsettling thought to end on.